Lanzilotta. If everyone's mic'd up that needs to be, kick it over to him to ask, to provide you some opening remarks, and then we'll take your questions.
Okay, thanks Desiree, I appreciate it. So again, welcome aboard the USS GERALD R FORD, CVN 78, first in class of the Ford class of aircraft carriers. It's my honor to host you today, and I'll say that what we're doing out here is super important because as you can probably hear above me, we're performing carrier qualifications for the fleet. This is providing new aviators to be able to be fully qualified, in this case in the F/A-18 Rhino aircraft, also known as the Super Hornet. So those aviators are getting their work done right now as we speak, and then later on during our time at sea, we'll be working with the training command squadron to do an initial fleet carrier qualification for those guys and gals. So super important to keep the fleet ready, and a big part of that is getting aviators qualified to land on, take off and land on the ship. The other thing we're doing right now is our C-SQUAT, or the Combat System Ships Qualification Test. That's part of a series of events right now. We're in the 2 alpha portion of that series. We started when we were in port before we even got underway. And that's just to demonstrate and collect a whole lot of data on the quality of our ship's combat systems, the self-defense systems that are installed in the ship, and several of those new technologies that all of you have been following. Last but not least, we're always training. So this ship right now is one of a couple of East Coast carriers that are out at sea. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower is on deployment right now. All the other ships are in some phase of maintenance or build. And as you walk around the ship, you'll see a lot of those sailors walking the deck plates and learning how it's done at sea. The best way to learn in the United States Navy, in my opinion, is to do it with hands-on at sea where we're meant to be. And USS GERALD R FORD is providing that platform for those sailors. So you'll see them, and I hope you get to interact with them, because the sailors and the crew are what make this ship come alive. They're what make this ship lethal. And to train them is very, very important to me, and I'd say any commanding officer in the fleet. So, with that, I'll take your questions.
I'll go first. So I want to talk a little bit about how the equipment's working during this operational period. You mentioned, first of all, that you have found EMALs to be reliable, or much more reliable than had a couple of years reported lately, and also how the elevator situation's going.
Yeah, we spoke about that earlier. I'd be happy to talk about that. So first I'll touch on where you just were. You were just on the flight deck and you got to see it up close and personal. Both Launcher 1 and Launcher 2, also known as Cat 1 and Cat 2, shooting Super Hornet aircraft off the bow, one after the other. And that system is really, it's so impressive. Not just in the technology that's there, but in how many catapult and arresting gear events we've had over the last year and a half. We've gone from a few hundred to several thousand, so over 7,500 arrested landings right now on the ship, which is impressive stuff. And we need all of those repetitions in order to build our data set so that we know that our equipment is working properly. And in my mind, it's doing great. It's a great system that we are no doubt incrementally improving, because that's what we do in the United States Navy. As far as your questions about elevators, I think we talked earlier, and you're specifically talking about the advanced weapons elevators. They're coming along also. We're over 93% complete with those. We expect to take delivery of the remaining elevators. We just took delivery last week of lower stage weapons elevator number 7, and that leaves 4 elevators to go. And Huntington Ingalls Industries and Newport News Shipbuilding, as well as their partners in the industry, are working literally day and night to get these elevators online for us. I think we're making tremendous progress with that. From what I see, I can tell you my sailors are engaged with the teams that are doing that work, learning about the new technology, and wringing out every single thing we can.
2 quick follow-ups. One is on the EMALs, you had indicated you sort of reliability. You seem to be not spot on that. You didn't, they seem to be running reliably right now. And on the elevators, when we were talking, you mentioned it looked like, or seemed like to me, there were fewer Huntington Ingalls folks on the ship now working on elevators as you.
Yeah, I probably owe you a follow-up on that. I don't have an exact number off the top of my head of the number of workers that we have on the ship. We have several dozen workers on the ship, but it depends on which trade and industry and which part of production and construction that we're talking about. And I don't want to give you bad information there. As you walk around the ship, particularly on the hangar bay, when you talk to the sailors later on in the hangar bay, you'll see our industrial capacity that's at work even while we're at sea. That's very apparent when we're in port, and it's also apparent when we're at sea. But we probably need to follow.
And emails reliability, you were mentioning you're set up in the
It's fantastic. I mean, so I was the CEO of the BAW 120 Greyhawks quite a few years ago. Went to sea on several aircraft carriers for several carrier qualification events, just like the one we're doing today. And I can tell you that, like any complex system that's, in that case using steam in order to propel the aircraft off the front of the ship, any complex system requires constant attention and maintenance. And the steam catapult system, obviously still serving today, overseas, deployed, doing the work of the Republic every single day, that requires a lot of manpower and a lot of just man hours and women hours on the flight deck. When we stop flying here at the end of the day, so last night we finished the OXO, it was like midnight 30, almost 1 in the morning. On a Nimitz class aircraft carrier, you would then have 2 to 3 hours of preventative maintenance to do on all that kit before you can close up shop for the night and go to get a bite to eat and get some rest for the next day of flight operations. On this ship, our sailors literally put it in standby mode and go to, get the same bite to eat and go to bed. So those are hard to measure benefits, but in my mind they're huge. And then just from a operability and reliability standpoint, we are shooting airplanes left and right. And on older ships, you'll see there will be a pause in the action, and you move from everything from Cat 1 to Cat 2. And sometimes, it's a quick fix, and sometimes it's not a quick fix. These are complex systems on complex ships.
So,
Kara?
so you have a combat system on board the ship and a dual band radar, which is also one of the key technologies that's new on the ship and unique. It'll be a one-off radar. What's the status of the operational status of the radar
right now,
and the
tracked you all the way from Norfolk here. We're over 100 miles out to sea. This morning we were, literally from daybreak, we had the dual band radar up, tracking multiple targets inbound. It's part of our combat system ships qualification test. I'm really impressed with that as well. That system is very high tech. So I'm a Hawkeye naval flight officer. I've been working with radar systems and IFF systems my whole entire career. Airborne is where I typically do my work until I became a ship driver the last couple of years. And looking at this system, looking at the ship self-defense system and DVR, it looks like a pretty darn good system to me. 100% honesty and transparent with you. I have not seen a failure since I've been the CEO of the ship. I think very highly of it. I also am very aware that it's a high-tech system that's going to require incremental improvement in whether it's reliability or understanding how it works because it's new. When you're on the flight deck, you probably looked at the island, and it looks a lot different from an island on a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. On a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, you've got 5 rotating radars that are doing the functions of those 6 flat panel radar modules that you see on our island. So again, the things you're not seeing, what are you not seeing? You're not seeing us taking it down in the middle of the night to do maintenance on the antenna. You're not seeing us replace the power modules that we've got in the older radars and stuff like that. So I've been very impressed thus far. And one of the things we're doing out here as part of our C Squad event is indeed building our data set on the DVR so that we've got even more information to make it.
Is there more work or parts or installation or upgrades still to be done in that system?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have so it's an aircraft carrier. We do life modernizations on these systems all the time. I'm certain there's going to be modernization on DVR, but nothing that's part and parcel of the basic function of the system. Track targets, control airplanes around the night pattern, defend against cruise missiles, that kind of thing.
Maybe you have a question?
Yeah, I guess kind of pulling all their questions together, I was wondering if you could talk about overall sortie generation rate, kind of where you guys are on the ship right now, and if there's any remaining activities you guys will be doing before shock trials that might be able to improve that, or is that something where maybe you need to kind of pass the baton to JFK later on to continue trying to get it up?
So I think so you're asking about sortie generation rate, and that's one of the things we were talking about earlier where you need a lot of repetitions in order to get really good numbers on it. I think of that in more of the programmatic category. I know the program executive officer for carriers is tracking that with the program manager, PMS 378. I know that they're keeping track of all of our numbers. Right now, the things that we're doing are much more tactical. We're qualifying aviators that are flying on the ship, and by doing that, we're finding what our throughput is. How can we find ways to do things more efficiently? I'm sure you noticed on the flight deck, that is a giant flight deck. So there are ways that once we embark the entire air wing, like back in November during our independent steaming event number 13, we embarked a portion of air wing 8, and we embark a larger portion of that air wing, and then the whole air wing, we're going to find, I think, great efficiencies in the flight deck size and layout. So we're still building on that. It's not, I don't have a sortie generation rate meter on the bridge. I can tell you that. What I do see is a lot of opportunity for innovation.
Okay, kind of tactically then, could you give maybe any other examples of things, procedures that you've tweaked on this platform versus an its carrier? Just anything that you guys are choosing to do differently?
Well, I don't know if it's choice, but by virtue of the design improvements inherent in the advanced weapons elevator design. So if you saw it up on the flight deck, we've now got a different layout of the weapons elevator doors. So the doors themselves come up off the flight deck and open like a clamshell. They don't. It's not a giant, wind blast catcher like on the older ships that would stop movement around the flight deck. So that in and of itself, the upper stage elevator is opening on a lower profile, so we can get weapons from the weapons transfer and assembly areas to the flight deck. That in and of itself will improve flow and improve the quickness that we have in terms of rearming the aircraft when we're in battle. But in order to do that, we got to get the whole air wing on board. We got to fill the magazines with weapons, even if they're practice weapons, and we gotta do it. So that's the stuff that I look forward to doing in the coming years.
And I just had a question. You had mentioned that you have people from other strike groups on here learning. What does that mean for you all, just to be able to have people here, not just on the ship going through everything that you all need to know, but also being able to I guess, expand beyond going forward?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple aspects to that. One is the sense of teamwork across the Navy and across Hampton Roads. So I think that's a big thing for me. When I see sailors from John C. Stennis, who we shared the pier with, and Harry S. Truman, my good friend that came today is the CEO of that ship, over in Norfolk Naval Shipyard, they're coming out here for training. My good friend Captain Marzano on JFK, the ship is literally being built right now, and his sailors are out there. Just feel this genuine feel of teamwork. It actually diversifies our organization, because with each at-sea period, we bring sailors on board who have a different viewpoint on things. They've seen things done differently, and we can avoid that kind of time, or that age-old thing you sometimes hear in the military, that, well, that's the way we've always done it. And frankly, that's not a thing here, because we're learning, we're teaming with diverse aspects of other ships, and we're bringing the whole East Coast Navy up a notch with what we're doing out here. It's pretty exciting stuff.
What was the percentage completion of the weapons elevators that you mentioned?
So we're over 93% right now. I don't have an exact number, because literally it moves hour to hour as the trades and the construction folks that are you'll see them in the hangar bay working on our weapons elevators. We're over about 93% of overall work. Right now, we just, like I said, we've taken delivery of our 7th of 11 total advanced weapons elevators, and there are 4 more to go.
On our last embark in November, I think, just for folks that are watching this throughout Hampton Roads, what's the differences between November versus now? I believe that the number was 70% of carrier strike group operations in November were completed. So in terms of just a general snapshot of where the ship stands.
Are you looking
That was
for?
75% PDT&T that was completed by now.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, so right now we're still in that post-delivery testing and trials phase.
Gotcha.
We're finishing that off, so I don't have a percentage for you, but we're in the probably close to 90% complete. We're months away from completing that phase, and then we're going to go into the full ship shock trial window, which is going to happen this summer, before we go into the shipyard and get some more modernization, repair, and basically preventative maintenance done.
Could you give more details as to what that remaining 10% looks like, and then what it'll take for the crew to get the ship ready for shock trials?
Yeah, I can. So we're going to continue on the combat system ship's qualification test elements. That takes more than one at-sea period, because what we're doing right now is a whole lot of dry runs so that we know that it's safe to fire live missiles at towed targets and fast targets and surface targets and that stuff like that. So basically, it's more of what we're doing right now, where we're going to finish out our C squat, as well as other elements of just the trials and making sure all of our gear is working. We're going to continue to do carrier qualifications, and we're going to continue to do carrier strike group integration in terms of command and control, making sure that we're learning how our communications and computer systems work, so that we can enable a whole forward strike group to succeed once we're out at sea in the next opportunity.
And then do you have to do anything to get ready for shock trials, or will other folks
Oh, yeah.
throughout the Navy?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, absolutely. So, as you've been walking around the ship, if you have a keen eye, in order to measure the ship's performance during that, we're going to remove some of the fragile items on the ship. So this room is a perfect example. I am not going to have this room in this configuration for the shock trial. A lot of the things in this room are family heirlooms from the Ford Foundation, so they'll have to be protected. Similarly, there are things on the ship that we just are not intended for a battleship scenario, something like a commercially bought printer that you connect to your computer. So those printers aren't meant to withstand a ship shock trial, so we're going to remove them from the ship and save the taxpayer the expense that we already know we're likely to get. That's quite a bit of work when you have a ship with 5,000 spaces in it, so we have to prepare all of our gear. We're also going to prepare the crew, so the crew has to know what to expect. They need to practice their damage control procedures, because that's something that we all need to be good at. And when we shock the ship, we need to make sure that we have the ship in as ready a condition as we can.
You're expected to do that in the summer?
Yes, ma'am.
As you get closer to shock trials, is that something that's on the forefront of the sailors' minds, or is it just kind of you go about your daily business as if as normal, right? Or is it?
I think it will be more and more. I can tell you, I've been thinking about this for well before I even got here, because it's a very unique thing that we do in the United States Navy. Again, I mentioned it earlier before putting on the microphone and getting on camera, but there are lots of nations build ships around the world. Not many nations put their new ships and their new systems through the rigor of test and evaluation that we do, and that's for good reason. That's how we know we've won in war in the past, by having survivable systems. So it's been on my mind, and I think as we get closer to the shock trial period, our sailors are going to become a lot more aware of it. Because the XO and I are going to work hard to train the crew and make sure they know what they need to do to get ready. And then it's going to be something exciting. We're going to make history. This hasn't happened for a carrier in like 35 years. Theodore Roosevelt in 1987.
I was going to say, and are you a little concerned because this is lead ship? You usually want to do this for lead ship. So, is that any extra concern for you? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Although, you're talking to a long-time serving naval flight officer. I used to, on a daily basis, strap myself into an airplane that takes off and lands from a ship with no ejection seat. So I have a different risk thought process than most people do. But I'm not overly concerned about it. Back to my point about the processes that we use to ensure that we're ready for things and to ensure that our gear is ready to work. They're not perfect, but they're really, really good. So I sleep well at night.
Captain, I thought a large part of post-delivery testing and training is about learning some of what the sailors have to do with procedures for some of this new technology. Is that an element of the combat systems qualification you're doing now? Or
Yes, absolutely.
Can you describe that?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So what I'll tell you is when you look at a new product, when you roll it off the line, any kind of new product is going to have the product itself. It's going to have its owner's manual. It's going to have where do you order parts if I need a new widget for that product. What I'm describing used to be called integrated logistics support. Now it's called product support. But part of that too is training. And the thing that we're getting by doing all these things incrementally and in a very deliberate manner is the sailors that operate these systems they've got experts sitting to their left and their right that are teaching them about exactly how the system works and what it looks like when it works properly and what it might look like when it doesn't work right and what you can do to restore that system. So that's kind of how I learned in the Hawkeye simulator way back when, 25 years ago, because we have those tools, and for these sailors they're getting an extra measure of that because we're going through each of these very deliberate and detailed tests. So I hope that gets your question. The training is embedded in exactly what
We have time for one more after Dave calls up.
Basically, when it comes to radar and communication systems with the carrier group, there are very important elements that would help readers understand what combat systems involve.
Sure. Yeah. From a general viewpoint, we use our radars to detect and track things that fly or float in the near vicinity of the ship, and we want to see them, continuously track them so we know where they're going and identify them, whether it's visually or via other means. And then we want to be able to tell the other units in the carrier strike group, hey, I've got this thing here, and this is what it is, and this is where it's going. Additionally, the modern systems help us identify, is this a threat to me or not? Meaning, is it coming directly at me or not? And the systems do that for us, and we want to make sure that we know how to recognize that, how every one of the buttons works on the screens of people that are using those things, so they can look at their displays and adequately understand what's going on. Does that make sense?
Any final questions?
If, assuming everything over the next few months goes well, what will be the total elapsed time between coming out of the shipyard to ready to go into full operations?
Coming out of the ship, which time?
Initial launch, dedication, whatever.
Gosh, I don't even know
Stop the
the
clock.
exact dates. So, well, the reason why I asked that is because if you track a carrier life from its cradle to grave, it will go in and out of the shipyard several times. And so there was, the initial build, there was a launch, then there was an initial set of builders trials, and a post-shakedown availability. So that yard period ended in October of 2019. And then when we finish our shock trials at the end of the summer, it'll be almost 2 years, not quite 2 years since that yard period completed. We'll go into another yards period to repair anything that we find from shock trials, as well as, like I said, some modernization, some preventative, and other corrective maintenance. That's just part of the life cycle of modern ship maintenance.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.